Don't do it. We're just going to hang out until like at least a couple people log in.
We make faces until then.
You can do whatever you want. You can start telling stories.
I have no stories.
You have no stories? All right.
Not appropriate.
Well, how was your workout that we just did?
It was easy.
Easy. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
We got one person.
What do we got?
Oh, it's one person on this one.
Steven, Brandy,
We're rolling.
Jonathan.
All right, guys. So, for everybody that's a part of the gym, we're coming to the end of the challenge. For anybody that's logging in that is not a part of CrossFit 760, we, over the last, close to 8 weeks, we've been going through a nutrition challenge, and the whole focus of this nutrition challenge has been much more than just about what happens in the gym and losing some weight and looking better. It's been really about trying to get people to understand how to take the habits that we build throughout the challenge and make them just part of their lifestyle, and have this challenge become something that is just their new lifestyle, rather than like, oh, the challenge is over, I'm going to go out for the weekend and lose it and take all that progress that was made and go backwards. So what I wanted to do for this week was to have my wife Natalie come on with me, and we're going to discuss and kind of talk about how we take the nutrition stuff that we've been building on and all the habits that we're forming and put them not just into our lives, but into the family life. As a coach and in the gym, one of the things that we hear all the time is like, oh, it's so hard because my family doesn't eat this way, or it's so hard because I have. So just a quick little background. My wife Natalie, she is the mother of 4 boys, my 4 stepkids, and she has done an amazing job kind of taking the health and fitness lifestyle and imparting that on her children. So we're just going to kind of kick off, and I'm going to kind of take this as a little bit of an interview, and then we'll open up to some Q&A at the end for you guys, and you guys can kind of dig in and ask anything and everything that you want to know. So Natalie, so big thing. You have 4 boys, and what was the point that you kind of really started to dig in and realize that the food that you were feeding, not just yourself but your kids, wasn't the way that you wanted to raise them, and wasn't the way that you wanted to fuel yourself?
I think that the first thing that I wanted to dig into was how sick the boys were all the time. And, you know, it's treated like it's normal for kids to have ear infection and sinus infection and like cold after cold. But I just really started to question why. Like, why were we spending so much time with the pediatrician? Like, why was someone always sick, someone always on antibiotics? And the biggest thing that stuck out to me, I'm like, well, it has to be connected to food. You know, that's the only thing that's changed from 200 years ago, you know, so that's when I started to realize, like, we can change something.
And how old were your boys at that point?
Let's see. It was before Joey was born, so Eli was probably 2.5, and he had just, I mean, the twins were sick a lot, and then Eli just had sinus infection after sinus infection, and the doctors were saying, you know, give him milk, give him chocolate milk, because he was a small kid, and they're like wanting him to gain weight, and I'm like, he's just getting sicker by everything you're telling me to do. So
one of the things that we've kind of talked about over the years is that nutrition really did truly come first for not just you, but for the family.
Yeah.
What were some of the big changes that you made right off the bat, nutrition-wise? And then what were some of the results that you saw from that?
The big thing I changed with the kids is no juice and no drinking calories, really, in general. And milk. Like, I realized, like, they didn't really need the milk. And right away, we cut out, like, ear infections and any infections.
And then, so your youngest wasn't born yet. So the youngest, Joey, he kind of was I don't want to say a cool experiment, but in a way, like you were able to start him from scratch. And what were some of the differences you saw with his health versus the other boys?
He just didn't get sick as often. Like he didn't have antibiotics until he was, I think, 9 or 10, and it wasn't because he was sick. He had a dog bite and it got infected, and it was just a night and day difference. Like he ate everything I put in front of him, and yeah, just a lot less sickness in general.
And then, so just kind of for you personally, like before you started working out and you started to change what you were eating, what did you notice?
I noticed a big difference in my energy and my mood. So like as a mom, I think we just get used to being so tired all the time and, getting, frustrated with the kids and whatnot. And I noticed that I was like pretty easygoing and had more patience and more energy overall. And of course, next came like body composition. Like immediately, like I started to lose inches in places I didn't know that I could lose inches.
And then kind of on that, so shortly after you started with the nutrition stuff, you started CrossFit in your basement in Virginia, correct? So how, as a young mother, raising these boys essentially by yourself, were you able to figure out a way to not just make nutrition a priority, but also make your workouts a priority?
Well, one, workouts had to happen when kids were taking a nap, or if they were old enough to occupy themselves, they could occupy themselves for 30 or so minutes. But my baby Joey was 9 months old. So whenever he was sleeping, I would quickly go work out. And sometimes that was during the day, and sometimes that was 9 o'clock at night. I made it happen.
And just kind of on like the worst case scenario, you only had X amount of time and you knew you needed to do some sort of workout. What did those workouts look like?
They looked like, 50 burpees or Fran with no weight at that point. Everything was heavily scaled, obviously. So it was just really quick workouts in less than 20 minutes.
And so kind of with that, so now all of a sudden you're raising these boys and nutrition is starting to become a priority. Your fitness is becoming a priority. And how did that, from those first year or so, how did that just turn into the lifestyle that it did for you?
One of the things I did as a mom is I did not make a separate meal for my kids. And maybe it's because I started out with twins. There was not really a lot of time to cater to them. So they always ate what I ate. And if they didn't like it, then that was too bad. So I think that played a big part in them eating, whatever I put in front of them, because like there was no other option. I could talk about that for some time. I don't know if you want me to.
We might get into some more of that. But then, so that's kind of a big one with the nutrition. But then what about the workouts? Like how did those, like once you got to a point where you were feeling like you were healthy and fit and you've made some of those gains in a sense and progress, what was the point, and like what went through your head where it was like, okay, well, this isn't just a workout to lose 10 pounds, or this isn't just a diet to have my body look the way that it wants to? Like what was the piece in your head where it was like, like this is who I am, like this is what I want?
So I think the reason why it stuck for me is that it was never about looking a certain way. Like that was a bonus, but it was about being the best version of me I could be. And that was mentally and physically, being strong for the boys and setting a good example. And I think it's so important. Like if it's all about the way you look, like it's not going to last long. Like that's only fun for so long, and then you get tired of it and you quit and you gain the weight back. But if it's truly like, I want to be healthy and I want to live an awesome life as healthy as possible and feel amazing for as long as I can, like that's going to stick with you.
Awesome. Okay. So, and then just kind of switching gears a little bit back to some of the nutrition stuff. your boys, aesthetically look much different than the majority of teenage boys these days. And would be hard to say that it had nothing to do with them kind of being bought into the way that you eat and the lifestyle that you've kind of pushed on them. So how did you get them to buy in?
Well, there's not really a choice whether or not they buy in. Like, if your kids aren't eating junk at home, then they're only going to get so much at school or from their friends or whatever. Like, they definitely eat some things that I wouldn't want them to eat when they're not at home, but it's what you give them first and foremost is going to shape everything else. And it's like, you feed them the best you can, and I think that makes all the difference in the long run.
And then, so like, what about some of the conversations that you have with them? Like, we talked to Joey, the youngest, and we talked to him about sugar and the impact that it has, and he's fairly well versed. So like, what are some of the conversations and kind of education stuff that you did with them from a young age?
I talked to them about it from a young age, but I think Joey's the only one that really asked those hard questions as to why. And there's so many different analogies you can use for kids, and it's great for adults too. But you can use the example of like a car. Like, you wouldn't put anything but gasoline in a car, right? And if you do, that's a really bad thing. Like, why are our bodies any different? Why are we putting things in our bodies that aren't recognized as food? And that's one thing that really resonated with Joey, especially, or like the plant example. Like, what are we going to feed this plant so that it grows properly and it's like sun and water? We're not going to feed it anything else because that could hurt it, right? And he understood that really well.
And then, so on all those times and months that you were alone with the four boys, what was the preparation like in order to not only make sure that you had meals, but also to make sure that they had meals? Because eating real food does take a little bit more effort up front, in a sense. So what did you do to kind of make it work?
Honestly, when they were younger, it was a little bit easier because we weren't, spread out with activities and whatnot. Like, they were home more, so I had time to make a decent meal. But I never had that much time to where I was putting hours into it. I found all of the mom hacks I could find where I could cut things short. Now, they're swimming every night, so we have activities. So what I do is I look at the week and I'm like, okay, if we're going to be gone every evening, then I need to have food in the crock pot so that when we get home, it's ready. Like, I don't have time to sit there and prep as we're trying to get food on the table. So that's, I think, really important between like crock pot and Instant Pot, and knowing what you can get on the table quickly is essential.
And then, so like, one of the other pieces that I hear, especially, and I'm sure you've heard it a million times as a coach, is, well, what about kids' birthday parties? What about holidays and that kind of stuff? So what are some of the things and kind of your thoughts on what's okay and what's too much?
Well, I always talk to the boys about it. I just said, if they're eating good 80 to 90% of the time, and then you go to a birthday party and they want to have a piece of cake, like, that's up to you to decide. However, if they're, going for the goodie bag or the soda or whatever, I would look at them and say, hey, is that really worth it? Would you rather have the piece of cake, or do you want to have that soda? Like, and immediately a kid knows that that's not worth it. So I just try to like teach them a little bit of balance and what's, a better choice.
And then we'll kind of go here because this is maybe one of my favorite stories. So what happened when your kids used to decide that they didn't want to eat dinner at night?
Well, that really only happened with the twins. I think Joey was so like, his palate was very developed and would eat anything. Eli was pretty good too, but with the twins, they kind of went through the period where like I didn't know what to make, so macaroni and cheese was for dinner, and that tastes good. And then as I got healthier and healthier, there were times where they're like, we're not eating this. So they had a decision, like they could eat it for dinner or they could eat it for breakfast, cold. And they ate some cold dinner for breakfast a few times, but that was it. And they started eating it, and they're not gonna starve. They're not gonna die from missing dinner, and they learn pretty quick. Like, I don't know of any other country where parents will just make a separate meal just so their kids will eat it. Like, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
And then kind of along with that, I know you gave me some facts years ago about kid doesn't want to eat broccoli because he doesn't like broccoli. What is the actual number and kind of the little science piece that you had given me?
The number is somewhere like 23 to 24 times that you have to try something, even adults, until you develop a taste for it. So I would encourage parents to put it on the plate, have your kids take 1 or 2 bites, and then put it on their plate again the next night or a week later, and have them keep trying it. And eventually they're going to develop a taste for it and like it. My only exception was if one of the boys like straight up gagged over something, and your kid, if they're faking or not. But like, if they truly just could not stand a certain food, that's fine. Like, I'm not going to force them to eat it and get sick. But for the most part, that was really rare. It was like, okay, I like broccoli now, or okay, the salad's actually pretty good. It just took time. And as parents, it's like up to us to help them develop that palate. Like, you don't want a 22-year-old who will only eat macaroni and cheese and quesadillas and chicken nuggets. And I've met those adults who will only eat those things. Like, parents think, oh, they'll grow out of it. They're just picky right now, but that's not true. They won't grow out of it.
All right. So we're about 15 minutes in. What is the number one piece of advice you could give to parents, husbands, wives, to get the whole family on board?
That's a really big question. I think the number one thing I would tell people is you are setting them up for either health or sickness. And you're doing that when they're kids. And you can give them the gift of health by teaching them now how to eat and what to eat. Or you can lead them down a life where they don't like vegetables and they'll only eat certain things. And to me, that's really, really powerful.
Cool. And then one trick or tip as families are getting started on this, maybe one of them's already bought in, but like one tip to kind of get the ball rolling and kind of get everybody going, like as far as maybe like a simple, easy meal, something along that line.
Oh man, a simple, easy meal. I have a ton of simple, easy meals. That's too big. It really depends on the age of the kid. Education is huge. If you have older kids, there's some great documentaries you can sit down and watch with them. If you have like 8 to 12-year-olds, like documentaries are good, but younger than that, there's some simple conversations you can have with them about what's going to help them grow to be big and strong and what's going to cause sickness, so that would probably be the tip. I would say foods, like, it just depends on what you guys like to eat, but I can give recipes if you guys want recipes.
So we'll go there. So what's the number one source on the internet that you've used over the years?
My very first source, like geeked out on hard, was Mark's Daily Apple. I read everything he had on that site about food and nutrition, and I have his cookbooks. I think I have all of his cookbooks, and his recipes are so simple but really, really good.
Cool. So that's it, guys, for as far as our base conversation. One of the big things as we kind of go forward is to maybe go back to the first Facebook Live video that we did and go back and rewatch it if you're kind of at this point where you're at the end of the challenge and you're not sure where to go, or maybe you didn't kind of dive in head first like you wanted to. Find something in some fashion that will start to click for you and really try to carry over any habits that you have built through the challenge and just make them lifestyle. We have a lot of holidays coming up. It's a tough time of year to stay on track, and there's some real simple, easy ways. We've kind of talked about them over the last couple videos that we've done. So have fun with it, make it a lifestyle, ask questions to us. If you're not part of the gym, find a mentor, find somebody, or just feel free to reach out to us, Facebook, Instagram, and we'll help you guys out and at least set you off in the right direction. So I'm going to open up to questions. So anything and everything that you guys want to know about nutrition, questions for myself, questions for Natalie, questions for both of us together, whatever you guys want to know, we'll spend another 15 minutes or so answering questions. And if there's no questions that come through, we'll just sit here and stare at you guys until somebody asks something. Brandy Reichart, do your kids eat your recipes?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. If I eat them, they eat them because they taste good.
And what if the kids say they don't taste good?
Then they need to try it a few more times.
Or eat it cold for breakfast?
Yeah, cold for breakfast is a good one.
Brandy, if you had something a little bit more specific on there, feel free to throw it out. Check the Instagram, see if any questions are coming through. Caden, favorite aunt and uncle. That's big words right there. Everybody else is going to be bummed, but we definitely understand what you're saying.
We love you too, Caden.
What else you guys got? Steven, no questions. I'm a little disappointed in you. Usually you're just firing questions off for me.
I was most excited for Steven's questions.
So we'll just kind of, let's have a little story time. Let's talk about Joey's first time eating cereal.
Oh gosh. He didn't know that milk was supposed to go in it. He'd never had cereal. I think he was like 6 or 7 years old, and I don't know where he was, and there was cereal there, and he didn't know what to do with it. And I'm actually pretty proud about that.
And then we'll throw out another quick story. So one of our friends today came over to surf with us, and she was telling us a story about her daughter that was at a camp or a sleepover or something, and they asked her they were eating dinner, and she said she wasn't allowed to have ketchup because her mom works for CrossFit. So for the kids, it's a really good excuse for them to not maybe eat something that they don't want. So give them that, let them buy into it somehow in some fashion. Man, you guys are not on point with the questions. Well, I don't know. I don't really have much for you guys. Let's what else can we talk about? What are some other things that we do?
About vegetables?
There was a point where I didn't eat vegetables for almost a year because I was trying to gain weight. I would maybe put a couple onions in my sweet potatoes and eggs that I would make. But now I eat vegetables because I know that they're good for me, and I know that I need them. I fortunately have learned to eat like a dog over the years. Most of my food just goes in a bowl, and it all gets mixed together, and I just eat whatever it is. And I've, for the most part, learned to take food as fuel more so than something that I want to eat every day. So that's one way that I attack it, is just kind of changing the mindset on what food is actually for.
Except mushrooms.
Caden wants to know when he's going to meet his new cousins.
Caden, come visit us and you'll meet them.
I tried to get your mom and dad to come down for Thanksgiving, but you guys are going to Tahoe to hang out in the cold instead, and we'll be out surfing in the sun. So if you want to come down and hang out with us for Thanksgiving, you're more than welcome. We'll pick you up from the airport or whatever. We'll get you down here. Well, everybody's quiet. Maybe you made them nervous tonight.
Maybe I just said all the things they wanted to know.
Or they're just over listening to me talk every other week for the last couple weeks about nutrition.
Maybe. But for real though, if you guys have any questions that you don't want to publicly ask, you're welcome to send me a private message on Instagram or whatever. I love answering questions. It's what I'm here for.
All right, I'll give you guys about another 60 seconds, and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. Caden, Christmas break, come on down. We'd love to have you. Yeah, I guess that's it. So no questions tonight. Everybody has everything that they need for some reason. So as we do in the challenge, so this is essentially the last week, and the next week we'll be retesting for all of our 760 members. And we'll be going through measurements and all that kind of stuff. And it should be really obvious before you even attack the workouts and get your measurements and stuff done, whether or not you've made progress through this. And we've talked about it before on these, is like we have to be able to be honest with ourselves. And if you guys are going into next week and dreading the measurements, you have to ask yourself why. Why are you dreading the measurements? Is it because you worked so hard all the way through this and you were perfect on your diet and you just are scared that the results aren't going to be what you want? Or is it because you haven't done everything that you could have done and you are scared to see the numbers actually come out and show you exactly what it is that you haven't done? So just kind of be aware of where your head's at going into this, and be honest with yourself. And if we're honest, it'll, in a sense, maybe take some of those negative thoughts away. We can just say, like, I didn't do everything that I could going into this, but I'm going to take a step forward, and I'm going to make this a lifestyle, and I'm going to work on changing it now. So different stuff like that. If you guys do have any questions, like Natalie said, fire them off privately. Post the comments for anybody that's watching this after the fact, and tag us in them, and we'll make sure that we get to them as quickly as possible. And that's it. I think Caden's our new biggest fan. So Caden, we'd love to see you, and thank you for at least joining in on our conversation, since nobody else wanted to tonight. Natalie, thank you for doing this. And that's it, guys. We'll talk to everybody soon.